two groups. They talk in terms of occupation, colonizers, apartheid. This is the Americanized racial justice version of this mapped onto the Middle East. That the Israelis are colonizers, for instance, and that they're indigenous peoples, and the Palestinians are indigenous peoples, despite there being Jews in the land many years before anyone even came up with the term Palestinian, which is a disputed term anyway. So they come up with this idea, for instance, that they're indigenous people who were moved out. The Palestinians are indigenous people, and they were moved out by the Jews, the Israelis, the Zionists. And this version is, of course, a replay of that version of American history, which is there were the Edenic first populations of America, the indigenous peoples, and then people from Europe came, the wicked Spanish and Italians and Portuguese, and come and do their thing. And so they just put this version of history onto the Middle East. To those people, I would say, fine, you can do that if you want. Now let's do Britain. Want to play that game? You sure? You better not get the British started. But that's
Tell me more,
version.
Douglas. What do you mean?
You want to play the indigenous people own the land first game and the other people should fuck off? Well, it's 60 years of mass migration into the UK. Who are the indigenous peoples of the UK? People who've been here the longest. Who are the settlers? Who are the illegal settlers in Britain? Oh, well, that would be the people who've arrived. Does anyone want to go there?
I would submit that Israel did not steal anybody's land. This is another thing I've heard in the last couple of weeks, words like occupiers and colonizers and apartheid, which I don't think people understand the history there. The Jews have been in that area of the world since about 1200 BC, way before the first Muslim or Arab walked the earth, 1,000 years before. I mean, Jerusalem was their capital. Okay, so if it's just about who got there first, it's not even close. There have been a continuous Jewish presence. Yes, the Jews were the ones who were occupied by everybody. The Romans took over at some point, and then the Persians and the Byzantines, and then the Ottomans. So yes, there was colonization going on there. Beginning in the 20th, 19th century, they started to return to Palestine, which was never an Arab country. There was never a country called Palestine that was a distinct Arab country. And yes, there was a problem there because there was two people who wanted to share the land, which is why the UN in 1947 said, okay, we're going to partition it.
And at a certain point, a very early point, the Jews were willing to partition the land so that once you have states here, once the British mandate leaves after the Ottomans that were here for 400 years already left, you could have a Jewish Palestinian state and an Arab Palestinian state, which is, from the Jewish point of view, Israel, and they could have had a Palestinian state. I mean, even in the 1930s, it could have had the embryo of a state, and then in 1947, an independent state. The Palestinian perspective is, and this did not change in the last 100 years, that the very collective existence of the Jews here in the Middle East is illegitimate except as individuals of the Jewish religion. They deny the existence of a Jewish people. Even today, the so-called president of the Palestinian Authority, Mahmoud Abbas, gave a speech. If you want, I'll send you the video of it. It's so ridiculous, it's unbelievable. I mean, he tells stories about there's never been a Jewish people and so on, and the Khazars in the Caucasus, and it's ridiculous. I mean, so they even deny the existence of a Jewish people. And of course, they believe that Israel is a product of a colonial British act, and the very existence of Israel is illegitimate. And they make the option of national coexistence, of a historic compromise, impossible. And therefore, they don't have a state.
But the barbarism is not new.
And it's only not directed at Israel only. This is why people think, oh my gosh, Hamas, we need to feel sorry for the poor Palestinians. People need to understand that throughout the Middle East, they have zero tolerance for minorities. And Israel is the bullseye in their eye because they could not kick Israelis out. I mean, look, they tried to eliminate the Armenians in Turkey. The same type of massacres, the beheading, the killing, the stabbing of a mother pregnant, getting the baby out, stabbing her in the stomach. I mean, we're hearing the stories out of Gaza. They did the same thing to the Armenians in Turkey in the beginning of the century. Israel didn't even exist. 2 million Armenians were massacred. They did it to the Christians in Lebanon. They did it to the Yazidis in Iraq. Have we forgotten what ISIS did to the Yazidis? What Hamas did to the Israelis is basically ISIS 2.0. Nothing has changed. It's the same tactics with the same barbarity that no one in the civilized world should accept or stand for. I can understand if people want to fight for their rights. Okay, fine. Fight man to man. Take it to the world stage. Go to the United Nations. Make your case. You don't go in and kidnap 6-month-old babies, 5-year-old babies, 2-year-old grandbabies. You're a father. I'm a mother. We have children. Can you imagine somebody taking our children? Grandmothers who are on medications. This is barbaric behavior and it's unacceptable.
We are strong enough to ignore them. For instance, we are strong enough to ignore the United Nations. Okay? Now, what is the United Nations? It's an organization based on the majority. And the majority of countries in the world are uncivilized. Okay? Authoritarian, totalitarian, barbaric. You have people, from Cuba and North Korea and Libya sitting in judgment on human rights. Now in La Hague, you have a Somali judge. I mean, that's a great oxymoron. Okay? It's like, good morning. Military intelligence, Arab democracy, what else do you have? Okay? Israeli patience, by the way. Yeah? Israeli patience. Yeah, that's an oxymoron too.
Donors to UNRWA, the main UN agency that supports Palestinians, including the UK, withdrew their funding 10 days ago because of allegations in a confidential Israeli document that this program has now seen. The document repeats an allegation the Israel Defense Force has made many times, that the Hamas terrorist organization has been methodically and deliberately emplacing its terrorist infrastructure in a wide range of UN facilities and assets. Explosive new claim that UNRWA staff were involved in the terror attacks on Israel, stating, from intelligence information, documents and identity cards seized during the course of the fighting, it is now possible to flag around 190 Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad terrorist operatives who serve as UNRWA employees. More than 10 UNRWA staffers took part in the events of the 7th of October.
We didn't understand how deep the Palestinian commitment to the destruction of Israel and the killing of Jews is. We assumed that the Palestinians are a variation of ourselves. They speak Arabic, they hate us, they want to kill us, okay.
They like good food, we like good food.
Basically, we assumed that we come from the same value universe, and we didn't fully comprehend. And when I tried to say this to people, I constantly met with rejection. That there is something fundamentally different in the political culture of the Palestinian people. But okay, we understand. Ideologically, this is what they want. But after all, don't they want a better life? And I said, a better life for them is to kill us. And the assumption was, a better life is what we would consider a better life. A society that has a constructive imperative at its core. And they don't. In their national body, there isn't a single constructive bone. Okay, now let me make two things very clear. A, this is not true about every individual Palestinian. I'm speaking about the collective and what motivates the behavior of the collective. And second, things can change.
If, as we have today in Gaza, we have the most fortified position ever in human history, because it's not only fortified by every house being booby-trapped and full of weapons under the beds of children in hospitals and in the schools and in mosques and what have you, but also it is fortified by the New York Times and Amnesty International and Joe Biden and everybody else. So you must be very careful in terms of getting what you need, namely to root out the barbarians with as little civilian casualties as possible. But since the Palestinians want us to kill their children, not only by putting their weapons in their bedrooms and in their schools, but also because they want the pictures of their children killed so that they can use public opinion against Israel, we can try to minimize it, but you cannot avoid it altogether. When dumb people or evil people say, stop the war, because civilians are being killed, they're basically saying, once the barbarians embed the weapons in their children, the barbarians will win because civilized people cannot respond and root them out. And if that will happen, then the barbarians won, not only vis-a-vis Israel. The Jews are always the canary, okay? They will win everywhere, because if this works, barbarians looking for things that work. The number one weapon of the barbarian is our values and the dumb application of our values, okay? Now, our values we need to keep because we're civilized people. We are not like them. The one thing Israelis are frightened more than anything else, that we become like the Palestinians, okay? That's the one thing we don't want to. In other words, behave like barbarians, as they do. And when the barbarians rape and decapitate and burn families alive, then between 75 and 90% of the Palestinian people support them. And every time you kill Jews, but the Palestinian people support the only role model that the Palestinians have are people who kill Jews. They don't have other role models. Okay, their schools are called after terrorists.
Pour que j'ai jeté l'encre, ma flamme ne finira jamais en cendres. La magie du premier amour me fait ignorer qu'il se terminera un jour. Ton odeur que t'as laissée sur notre bed, comment veux-tu que je ne cesse de penser à toi? Aïcha mama, Aïcha mama, reviens-moi Aïcha, ne t'en va pas Aïcha. Dernière chance, Aïcha, nous deux c'est pour la vie, Aïcha. Zangelanga, Aïcha, Makendete, Aïcha, Chassa Souka, Aïcha, Yopona Libela, Aïcha. Zangelanga, Aïcha, Zoa Mama, Zangelanga, Aïcha, Zangelanga. Aïcha, Aïcha, Zangelanga, Aïcha.
But the barbarism is not new. And it's only not directed at Israel only. This is why people think, oh my gosh, Hamas, we need to feel sorry for the poor Palestinians. People need to understand that throughout the Middle East, they have zero tolerance for minorities. And Israel is the bullseye in their eye because they could not kick Israelis out. I mean, look, they tried to eliminate the Armenians in Turkey. The same type of massacres, the beheading, the killing, the stabbing of a mother pregnant, getting the baby out, stabbing her in the stomach. I mean, we're hearing the stories out of Gaza. They did the same thing to the Armenians in Turkey in the beginning of the century. Israel didn't even exist. 2 million Armenians were massacred. They did it to the Christians in Lebanon. They did it to the Yazidis in Iraq. Have we forgotten what ISIS did to the Yazidis? What Hamas did to the Israelis is basically ISIS 2.0. Nothing has changed. It's the same tactics with the same barbarity that no one in the civilized world should accept or stand for. I can understand if people want to fight for their rights. Okay, fine. Fight man to man. Take it to the world stage. Go to the United Nations. Make your case. You don't go in and kidnap 6-month-old babies, 5-year-old babies, 2-year-old grandbabies. You're a father. I'm a mother. We have children. Can you imagine somebody taking our children? Grandmothers who are on medications. This is barbaric behavior and it's unacceptable.